Welcome to RPG Heroes, a podcast where every other week I speak to a true hero in the realm of role-playing games about their journey, their craft, and their views. As your host, I will focus on one particular aspect of this wonderful hobby for the interview, regale you with stories from my own 25 years of experience with role-playing games, and reflect on the major takeaways from the interview. Join me now on this epic journey and awaken the hero in you. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about RPG campaigns versus one-shots, with the help of Guy Sclanders, who is very well known as a YouTuber from the How to Be a Great GM channel. We'll talk about the merits and downside of both campaigns and one-shots and how to go about playing them or running them. And with Guy, we're going to discuss the narrative structure in role-playing games and how those are affected by being a campaign or a one-shot. But before we can get into all that, some more generic things that I would just like to mention. One being, thank you guys so much for following me on Twitter at RPG Heroes 1. It's a new account, and so far the interaction is going quite well. And I am super grateful for the RPG heroes that I have been interviewing so far for retweeting and sharing things that I've been writing about the episodes that they're in. It really makes all the world of difference when it comes to getting the podcast out there. So that's great. And of course, all you listeners out there who are interacting with me, thank you so much. It really makes me feel like I should keep making episodes because, we are in episode 7, and apparently, according to data found on the internet, episode 7 is usually where people either give up or they will continue for a long time. So we're at that kind of pivotal moment in the podcast. And to be honest, we're not done yet. Come on. There are so many more RPG heroes that I want to talk to, that I want to ask all kinds of questions of, and of course that I want to share with you guys. So let's keep on making this show and keep listening to it. Of course, nowadays we live in strange times with this corona outbreak. Now, I'm not going to talk about this for very long because I'm sure you've heard enough of it in all kinds of ways. But it is a thing that's going on. It is affecting the listenership because a lot of people do not commute anymore. And, the commute tends to be a great time to listen to a podcast. And of course, if you have to work at home, sit behind your laptop all day, you might not be that keen on sitting down for yet another hour of listening to me babble. But hopefully you can find some time to listen to podcasts anyway. My favorite moment for listening to podcasts, for instance, is when I take a walk, which I tend to do pushing a pram around. And once our daughter is asleep, that's a great time to pop those earbuds in and listen to some interesting content. I sincerely hope that you are all okay, that you're healthy and staying safe and keeping your distance from people and washing your hands and all that. And I sincerely hope also that the ones that you care about are doing the same and that they are all right. I think that people who work in the healthcare industry at the moment are just absolute heroes. They might not be RPG heroes, but they're heroes nonetheless. All right, but enough of that. Let's dive into our topic, shall we? Okay, so let's start our discussion with one-shots. The idea of a one-shot is literally we have a beginning, middle, and end that all take place within one session of a game, which means that there is not a follow-up, etc. You could have a series of one-shots, that is possible, but then it would be more episodic, such as episodes of Star Trek, let's say, where you could have very loosely or even not at all connected stories taking place over several adventures. You could have a different cast for each adventure, etc. But the whole idea of a one-shot is that there's not a long-running story where week in, week out you play the same characters and the same narrative. Now, one-shots have a lot of merits. For one, you get to try something new without committing to it long term. For players, that could be a character idea or a character theme, perhaps a certain class, etc., or even a specific play style for your player character. And you get to try it out for a little bit. And if you didn't like it, that's okay, because the next game, the next one shot, you can do something completely different. And for the Game Master, the same thing goes. You can try out a certain theme for your game. You can even try out a whole new game system or a new setting for your game. And it is just a wonderful way for you to experiment and try things out. And if you're looking for one-shots, well, there is a great place to find them. Or if you're looking for players for your one-shot idea, same place. There is a group on Facebook called the OSG, or the One-Shot Game Group. And they're just wonderful people, very creative, and they tend to play a lot of very different games. Very different one-shots, obviously. They use a lot of different game systems. There are games of Dungeons & Dragons on there, of course, because that is still a very popular game. But in this group, you also see a lot of smaller indie type role-playing games going on. And if you want to try a few of them out, this is a wonderful place to do so. So I really recommend them. I have run for them and played with them, and they're just really great. So I'll put a link in the show notes to them. Another merit is that it's manageable, because in our modern busy lives, well, all you need is just one evening to have a game and it's finished, right? So you can then get back to your busy schedule, which is great. And when it comes to the person running the game, prep also tends to take less time due to the lack of a huge overarching storyline and individual side quests, etc. You can really focus on one tight story. And of course, with the current situation with Corona, people's schedules are all over the place at the moment. Well, with a one-shot or even a series of one-shots, it's okay if one or more players miss a session or two. So that's another helpful thing about one-shots. It can also just be a refreshing break from a regular campaign. My current campaign of Dungeons & Dragons, for instance, has been going on for almost 2 years, I think. And, well, every now and then you just crave to play something different. Maybe a different kind of game, a different genre, etc. And by stepping out of your campaign just once for a one-shot, it gets the creative juices flowing again. It can really also help combat something called Game Master fatigue, where the Game Master kind of gets tired of running the same game again and again, and for players as well. It can also offer the Game Master a chance to play for a change, and for one of the players who would like to try to run a game. That's another wonderful merit. And last but not least, the play style of a one-shot can be a little bit more gritty and dangerous and a lot less risk-averse than you would see in a long-running campaign. Because, well, if your character dies, or if a character dies, it's not an enormous loss like in some long-running campaigns. So you get to be a bit gung-ho, if you will. Of course, one-shots also have their downsides, and they're, of course, directly related to the merits. So, for instance, trying out something new. Yeah, that's great, but it means you have to get familiar with a completely new game system or a new setting, or as a player, even just to a new character. And for some people, that can take quite a bit of time. And that could mean, actually, that it takes you more time between games than just playing your regular game that you've always played. The other thing is, because it's okay to miss a session of a one-shot, people are not always as committed to actually showing up or sticking to the scheduled time as they would be with a fixed campaign. The refreshing break could actually spell the end of a campaign. Let's say, as a game master, I say, look, this week, guys, let's do a one-shot of something completely different. And after that game, I became so enthusiastic about that game that I've decided to completely ditch my fixed campaign. And, well, we're going to do a new campaign, guys, in this new game system that we tried out with the one-shot. Yeah, that is, of course, a risk of playing a really, really good one-shot. And with the more gritty, dangerous, and less risk-averse playstyle, of course, you could get into some odd situations where characters completely misbehave because they figure, well, who cares? It's just a one-shot. And of course, that's not what you want. But that all depends on your group and the maturity of your players. I do have some personal experience with one-shots. I've played several one-shots and I've also run one-shots. And I have to say I do enjoy them quite a lot, especially when it comes to this refreshing idea. So, for instance, I ran a one-shot of Cyberpunk 2020. I think it was about 2 years back for the OSG Facebook group. And I played with people that I did not know at all, which was refreshing and interesting. It's always good to get to know other people and how they play. And I have to say, there were some wonderful role players in that particular group. And it was so much fun, and so much more unexpected stuff happened because I did not know the players themselves. So that was very interesting. I found the timing aspect very interesting because with a long-running campaign, if at the end of the session you haven't reached the end point of your notes quite yet, but you found an interesting cliffhanger to end on, then that's all right, and you have some prep already done for the next session. But with a one-shot, your timing has to be pretty tight because at the end of the session, the game should be done. The story should be finished. There should be some kind of satisfactory ending to it all. So I found that very interesting, that I was looking at the clock a little bit more and trying to speed up the story where I needed, or slow down things as the game session of 4 hours required. And luckily I was able to finish the story roughly on time. We went over time, I think about half an hour in the end, which was okay with everybody, luckily. And yeah, that was mostly due to me watching the clock and keeping an eye on the pace of the game, which was actually a really good exercise for my normal game as well. At the same time, I experienced a little bit of a downside, which was that normally I play with friends, like people I really know and I like and I care about. And this time I was playing with people I literally did not know. And of course, if you play one-shots with people all the time, you can have a similar bond to with a fixed campaign. However, this time I knew that it was unlikely I would be playing with them again anytime soon. And I missed the part of gaming where I just hang out with my friends and catch up with them, etc. This was really, okay, what are the characters? What are we going to do? And let's go, boom. Very brief introductions as to who is who, but that was about it. And so it was very gaming focused, and not the social aspect was a little bit less. Of course, that could be different in your experience, but this is what I personally felt when I was playing that particular game. Another game that I have experienced one-shots with, especially running them, is Call of Cthulhu, which I think lends itself towards one-shots really well. Partially because of the lethality, the characters are quite fragile in that game, and partially because, well, once you have discovered what's going on in the scenario, you can come to a very satisfying ending. So it doesn't have to be a very long-running campaign. It can be. There are long-running campaigns in Call of Cthulhu, don't get me wrong, but the modules out there, or the scenarios as they call them out there, that are written for Call of Cthulhu, lend themselves very, very well for one-shot use. And I've done that quite happily. Although my first real one-shot that I ran, we played for 12 hours straight. That was a bit long. So in 2 weeks' time, we're going to try a shorter scenario, and we're going to play this game online, obviously, which will change the atmosphere, I think, a bit. But I'm going to do my best with music and sound effects to keep the creepiness up to the max. Okay, so let's move on to campaigns. So the idea of a campaign is literally the opposite of a one-shot. So instead of just playing one session, one story, that's it, you have a single story running over several sessions of a game, and that could be anything from 3, 4, 5 sessions all the way up to, well, several years worth of sessions. And in fact, just today I watched a video from Dungeon Craft, which by the way is an excellent YouTube channel, and he told us that he's been playing the same campaign for over 30 years now. Wow. Talk about epic. So anyway, so campaigns, they have a lot of merits, just like one-shots. One is that you get to really explore an epic story from beginning to end, with lots of room for details, for personal side quests, for real character development, and recurring non-player characters, which make the world feel so much more alive and real. Your character gets to develop as a person, and also mechanically leveling up. And leveling up is, well, for me and for I think a lot of people who play and enjoy role-playing games, a very important aspect that you can enjoy of the game, which is building up that character and getting better at stuff and gaining new skills, etc. That's a lot of fun, and that's something you tend to miss in a one-shot. You also get a committed crew of a game master plus some players, and you really get to know each other's characters as well as each other as people. You get to experience a lot more twists and turns in the narrative, and you can even employ the hero's journey, which is also known as the Campbellian monomyth. Starting out as a level 0 nobody and finishing the story as an accomplished epic hero with all the ups and downs in between. If you're unfamiliar with the theory of the hero's journey, check out Joseph Campbell's book about it. It's well worth the read. I'll put a link in the show notes. A campaign also gives you something to look forward to each session, just like a good TV series does. You really get a chance also to get attached to the characters, the world, and even the nasty bad guys that you just learn to love to hate. Well, of course, campaigns also have their own downsides. A long, epic story, session after session after session. Well, if you don't like your character, or if you actually don't like where the story is going, it can be a bit annoying. In fact, you might give up on it at some point if it takes too long. For the Game Master, similarly, if the campaign has been running for too long and you're running out of ideas, but you really like the characters, you get into this very uncomfortable spot where you kind of want to give up, but you don't want to give up, if you know what I mean. So that can be kind of difficult sometimes to deal with. Also, leveling up, well, that's fun until you get to very high levels. I mean, there are people who really enjoy 20th level Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, but I also know a lot of people that don't. Combat alone takes forever at high level, and the preparation for the Game Master becomes a lot more complex at high levels as well. The commitment to the group is a big thing in campaigns, and if you can't bring it up, or if something changes in your life, such as having a child or moving to a different country, well, that can be a real bummer if you have to leave the group, or if you have to somehow force the group to play a lot less frequently because your character is important to the story, or because everybody just wants to keep you involved. All the twists and turns in the narrative, well, they can become difficult to follow depending on how well presented they are. And of course, a downside of this whole hero's journey can be, well, if you die halfway your hero's journey, that can be something that is really disappointing and sometimes even painful. And of course, there is a risk as a game master that you think, well, this character is so important to my very long-running story, he or she cannot die. Whoops, you suddenly got plot armor, and that's a whole problem in itself. The majority of my experience with role-playing games has been with campaigns. I've been running quite a lot of campaigns, and I've played in several campaigns. And if there's one thing that I've experienced a lot with campaigns, is that they haven't always ended. Sometimes they've just petered out, running out of ideas, etc. Sometimes the players or the game master couldn't stick to the schedule anymore, couldn't make it, and had to give up. And sometimes you just saw this new exciting thing coming by and you figured, well, let's give that a go. Maybe we'll pick this campaign up at some other point. Not. Yeah. So, yeah, the longest campaign that I've played was about 2.5 years, where we played every single weekend. And it truly was an epic experience, I have to say. The players were excellent. They were really some of the best role players I've ever played with. And the campaign really became this organic thing where the characters interacted in such a natural way. They really grew into the characters, these players, and they got to know each other so well that sometimes I could just sit back for half an hour and watch them do their thing, and it was like watching a good series. Very, very enjoyable. And I have to say, bringing that to an end was also very satisfying, because I had experienced before running a game and at some point it just peters out, and that disappointment that wasn't there now. It really felt like we finished it off very neatly, and it was great also to hear from the players that they were sad it was over, but they also thought it was a cool thing that they got to kind of finish the story. With the current Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I'm running into the problem where I think it's going to take too long if I keep using the same pace. And so what I actually did is, in the interview, I've asked Guy for some advice on this. So that will show up in the interview. Speaking of which, let's move on to the interview, shall we? So, welcome to the show, Guy Sclanders, best known in RPG circles for his YouTube channel, How to Be a Great GM, and his website, greatgamemaster.com. Guy is a born game master, started running games at the tender age of 14. which is an unspecified number of years ago. The last 20 years, he spent writing scripts and screenplays for TV and film and participating in something that caught my interest, competitive game mastering. So I'll be asking you about that in a moment. And he's been creating amazing content on YouTube for RPG enthusiasts like you and me. His videos are entertaining, with many humorous characters shining their light on a topic, but above all, educational, with very well researched and detailed information that I can really put to use in my gaming efforts. So, in short, an RPG hero. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. That's a very large and long introduction.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on to the show. And like I said, competitive game master. Let's get into that first, because funny enough, I was having a conversation with my my gaming group here in Nijmegen, and it was about whether or not you can win at role-playing games. And so some of us said, no. And I said, well, there are competitions, I think. And just by chance, today I'm talking to you, and you've been involved in competitive game mastering. What on
That's
earth?
Right.
What is that?
I actually thought that it was the norm. The only conventions that I had attended for a long time in Africa, in South Africa, where the convention, it was competitive gaming, and that's what it was. So
Right.
I assumed that was what all role-playing conventions did.
Okay.
And I have subsequently discovered that that is not the case, and may be something fairly unique to South Africa.
Yeah, interesting.
But the concept is really simple.
So how does it work?
You attend a convention and you have to play in 2 out of 3 games. You can play all 3 games if you like, and then you can choose your top two scoring games to submit. Yeah. But the table, each member of your gaming table, you run your module at the convention for 3 hours or 4 hours, and then you hand out a worksheet, and on that worksheet it says, please score me in a 1 to 5. 1 being very bad, 5 being fantastic, and it runs the full gamut of what you would expect a game master to know. So rules knowledge, adjudication, fairness, characterization, story adaptability, engagement, table management. I actually even have a template which we designed, which sort of took it even further, but not for competitive purposes, but for self-developmental purposes. So you could reflect. Anyway, you'd hand the sheet out, and each of the players would put in their scores, and you would score each of the players likewise. They had a slightly less complex scoring system for players. Yeah. And then all the GMs would submit their score sheets, and at the end of the weekend, the GM scores were tallied, and the top GM who scored the highest was considered the best GM of the year for that for those conventions anyway. Yeah. And then the player would also get scored, and the best player would be selected as well. Wow. So we always just thought that was the norm, and then you hear other people going, "Well, I don't know if you can do that." And it's like, "Well, of course you can. We did it." So it was very, very insightful, and I'm actually very glad that it did happen, because it caused me to start my YouTube channel. Wow. I started participating in the convention because it wasn't in my home city; it was in the capital city, or the main city anyway. Yeah, and I competed and had the good fortune, or was capable of deceiving my players well enough that I managed to win. And on the 3rd year, I won every year that I attended. But eventually, it got to the point where I was signing up, and I was just signing up to compete, not because I enjoyed winning, but because you basically signed up and you kind of had to be scored anyway. Yeah. And as I was doing so, someone next to me said, "Oh, you're signing up for the competition, are you?" So I said, "Well, yes." And they said, "Well, then I'm not going to do it, because there's no point. I'll never beat you." Oh. And I went, "No, wait, that is the completely wrong approach. Every game master has the capacity to be a great game master. And it's maybe because I have a little bit of experience, or maybe I have a little structure, or I have a this or that, but there's no reason why they couldn't compete." So immediately I withdrew from competitive play, and started to make the channel to try and encourage other people to not sort of not just accept that there were going to be bad game masters or average game masters, but to realize, hey, it's storytelling, and good storytellers practice and they reflect and that sort of thing. So anyway,
wow, that's wonderful. Oh, I'm glad I caught on to that little line then. About competitive GMing. Oh, wow. So that, and I think that's a sign of most of the people that I interview so far, people that I consider to have brought some kind of really good contribution to the game, is the thought that, okay, I am by nature or by luck or by training good at something, and I want to share that experience with other people, either through creating a product like a game or some kind of a supplement for a game, or by creating content online or coaching people. And I think this is wonderful. And it's great for the community. Yeah. Okay. And so I will tell my gaming group now that they can score me. Yeah, I'll definitely give that a go. And I suppose that also kind of ties in your channel and your website with the books that you've published, right? So I have a book right here, which of course my listeners cannot see, but I can still hold it up to the camera just for effect, which is the Complete Guide to Creating Epic Campaigns.
That's right.
And what a wonderful book it is. I love the way it's written and created. I like all the tables, and it's very nicely organized. And what's great about it is that, so I watched a lot of your YouTube videos, quite a lot of them, and sometimes I re-watch them, but this has the pertinent information on paper, which is nice to have when you're actually creating your campaign yourself. So that's a wonderful thing. And you have a new book out quite recently, right?
That's right. It hasn't even, the hard copy hasn't even been released yet. The PDF is out, but the hard copy is coming at the end of this month.
Right. Yeah. And what's that about, the new book?
It's called, very fancy title, and you can tell that there's lots of creativity going on in my book writing world. A Complete Guide to Nautical Campaign.
Right.
But it is very different from epic campaigns. And epic campaigns is about, as you say, putting into action a lot of the technicalities of telling a good story, and having an understanding of how things work allows you to then work within those parameters.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, just while we're on that particular topic quickly, a lot of people wrote in and said, look, there are all these wonderful tables, and the tables you can download separately from the book on our website, but there's some confusion as to how some of the tables work.
Yeah.
So today, literally today, and it will be out this week, as a matter of fact, so I don't know how that fits with your release schedule, but will be a video dedicated to just working with those tables.
Right.
And to expand on what the book didn't necessarily cover. Because of course, once you've written a book and you've released it, you forget about it, and then you come back to it sort of 3 months later and you go, why on earth did I stop there? There should have been more there, and that didn't even need to be there, and that should have been, so there's always that sort of thing. And we're in that phase now with nautical campaigns, because nautical campaigns there's definitely guidelines for how to run a game using ships.
Yeah. Okay.
But what we also realized was that the existing material that had been laid down was good, but because effectively the RPG that we were using never had nautical combat as its focus, there were a lot of things that it didn't do very well. And so we said, well, this book is going to allow you to run a game at sea, and we're going to have rules for crew morale and for the cost of shipping goods from one side of the planet to the other, and all the stuff that you're going to encounter when running a nautical game.
Yeah.
But we're also going to rewrite the rules so that the game is far more entertaining, and accounts for things like the problem of scalability. So when you have a fantasy game and you have these low-level characters. A castle or a siege engine is terrifying because it's a huge amount of damage, and it's. But once you start getting to the point where you are literally wrestling with dragons, that same castle doesn't even pose a problem.
No.
You literally just walk through it. So the same thing happens with ships. Ships start off as being terrifying, and then after a while you're like, well, I don't even acknowledge their existence.
Yeah.
So we had to build in a way that ships would scale up with the characters as well. So you're not going to get to a point where you would ever ignore a battleship.
Yeah.
And I've always, as with the first book, epic campaigns, epic being, I have always run giant games that I call them, I mean, they're super high fantasy. No one has ever accused me of running a small, intimate game.
No. All right.
We said with nautical campaigns, well, we've got to have fun with fantasy. So we have giant aircraft carriers that don't launch flying aircraft, but they do launch Pegasi and Giant Eagle. And we have a whole lot of aquatic ships, so there's a whole bunch of submarine stuff that's going on. And we tried to create ships and things for the races, the common races, or the more interesting ones anyway. And sort of said, well, what would a merfolk ship be like?
Would they
first
even
it
have
would
a
be
ship?
full of water.
Oh yeah.
Because they're not going to make a ship that's got air inside of it. They don't need to.
No.
And so what are then the implications of that? So for me, one of the exciting things was every single ship has a map that goes with it. So we said, right, here's the ship and here's the map. And when I was drawing the map or creating the map for the merfolk ship, I'm like, this is basically just a mobile coral reef. And merfolk don't need a kitchen. They need a sort of, it's more like a buffet where whatever it is that they eat would just be swimming around inside a large contained space. So that's what I love about our game, is that you pull on a little thread, and if you ask just one more question of, but why, what's different? Suddenly this whole world opens up to you, and you go, you know, the Little Mermaid really didn't do much in terms of advancing our understanding of aquatic culture. Let's go further. Let's ask the question of what do they eat, and then do you have a chef, or is it more of a fish wrangler? I don't even know what you would call someone who is in charge of keeping the aquarium master. I don't know. I really don't.
The master of fish.
Anyway, so that book's just come out. That one we kickstarted very successfully, thankfully. And so the hardcover will come out at the end of the month. But as with Epic Campaigns, if you buy the Epic Campaigns book and you get hold of us, you get the PDF free. I hate it when you buy a hard copy. And then you have to buy the digital copy on top of that. And you go, but why? It's the same thing. And quite literally, I was sitting with the designer for the book, and he said, all right, well, now we've got to convert it into an interactive PDF with bookmarks and things. And I went, oh boy, 10 minutes later, we were done. And you go, really? That you can't. Anyway, sorry, I'm not going to rant about that. Anyway, so yes, the book is a lot of fun. And I've been running games for people using the rules, and people have had a lot of fun with it because it's quick and it's fast and it does what it needs to do, we think.
And it's something a bit different, I think, having a nautical theme to your campaign. That's lovely. And you mentioned rules a few times. So is it because Epic Campaigns, the book, is system agnostic completely? What about nautical campaigns? Is it just based on a specific role-playing game?
Nautical campaigns, we use the open gaming license for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Which is ironic, since you can't really mention the name 5th edition Dungeons or Dragons or any combination thereof in the open gaming license. But yes, so if you're familiar with 5th edition, you will be able to use the book straight away. But we have had a lot of people saying, well, can we use it with other systems? And again, when you strip away the veneer of terminology that's particularly Dungeons and Dragons related, yes, you can, because we had to write a whole new section of rules.
Yeah.
And that is principally because of my developmental editor. I didn't know what that term meant when I started writing this book. And a developmental editor is someone who not only edits your work, but also questions why you've done certain things. So they look at, you said this in this chapter, but next chapter you either contradict yourself or you've forgotten that you said this. So they're much more involved. And Mike's favorite term, he's a wonderful man from Michigan. He would turn to me and he would say, you know, you've written this. And I would say, yes. And he'd say, but that's stupid. And I'd go, well, that's the rule. That's how it works. And he's like, well, change it. It's your book. Change it.
Okay.
So we fought, and by fought, I mean in the wonderful sense of role-playing, fighting, where he would say, well, that's stupid. And I'd say, well, but that's what has been established. And then he'd say, well, fix it, change it, adjust it, make it work. And then the writing of the rules became an exploration of, okay, well, that's what we would do when we're on land. How can we translate that into the sailing environment so that we still keep the flavor of sailing, but the rules don't get in the way, because we didn't want that to happen either.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it was a hell of a lot of fun, and already the next book is waiting for me to actually start. Yes. So we like I said, we ran a Kickstarter for nautical campaigns, and at the end of it we said, all right, well, you guys have got the PDF now. If we did another book, what sort of book would you be interested in? And we get requests for 3 different types of books. Basically, we get requests for my world setting, which I've been playing in for nearly 20 years now. And that will happen, but I have said to my business partner, there is a very specific way I want that to happen. It's going to be very expensive to do, but we'll get there. Another one is a player book similar to Epic Campaign, so how to be an epic player, with guidelines and things for people. We get lots of questions of, I want to be able to do a characterization better, or how do I step out of my comfort zone? So lots of things on that. And then the third one, which is the one that we're going to be doing next, simply because we had so much fun with nautical campaigns, is we're going to be doing aerial campaigns.
Lovely.
And yes, already we've kind of we've looked at it and we said, okay, we're going to use exactly the same team that we did for nautical campaigns, because nautical campaigns, we had a Kickstarter budget, so we had a bigger team, and we really could make it look as good as we could. So aerial campaigns is going to be just a step up from that. There will be some rules in there on how to obviously handle aerial combat, which is very, very important. And you know, sometimes I kind of sit back and I go, well, what makes one qualified to actually write this kind of book? And you go, well, that's a pretty good question. And it really boils down to 2 things. One, I've run campaigns, and you can actually watch them on the channel, involving aerial ship combat. So I've used the RPG systems out there, and we started with Pathfinder, and then we moved on to 5th edition, and none of them really had a satisfactory answer for, if someone falls off of a ship at a mile above the surface, and the ship uses magic propulsion, can the ship point straight down and accelerate past the person, then level out using magic and catch the person? If they match the velocity of the person, you know. So there's those kind of questions which you as a GM, you're sitting there going, well, I don't know.
I'm not a physicist.
According to the rules, you fall and you take 20 d6 and that's it. You know, because they put a cap on for some reason. And you go, well, and I just hear Mike's voice going, but that's stupid. You're like, well, yes it is, but again, we're working with those. So yeah, that's where we're going to be. And people often think of aerial stuff and you go, well, there's not a huge amount of space there. And you go, well, actually there's a huge amount of exciting things. I ran a campaign called the Karos Stones, actually, on another YouTube channel called Save or Dice.
Yeah.
And the Karos world was a world that had exploded outwards and then been sort of caught by magic and suspended. So there were 3 distinct layers to this world, and you could fly between them.
Yeah.
And in Karos Stones, the guys didn't really ever control the ship that they were on that was flying. And what they were on, by the way, was a 4-flippered flying whale. They're called sky whales, but what happens within that world is when you have something called a sky whale, over time people are going to call it just a sort of a sky will, and so it devolves down into it's a sky will, and you go, well, from sky well, yeah, but it's a sky will, it's the contraction of the word. So they had a sky will that they could fly around on and take control over, and she had her own personality, of course, because she was a living being. But I was forced to figure out, well, how would other cultures handle flying? And we came up with one for the orcs, which I think is it's derivative. It's pulled from different sources and things, but the orcs would inflate these giant bladders of these large herbivores, and just suspend this basically a metal cone underneath it. Would all climb in the cone, launch the bladder, and basically drift out over enemy ships, and then drop the cone and hopefully hit the enemy ship or just plunge into oblivion. But either way, they die in glorious battle. So for them, it was okay. But yeah, so I've had a lot of games where I've had this dramatic aerial stuff going on, and people have asked questions, and you've had to come up with answers and try and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And anybody who is a hardcore rules fanatic, or who is someone who goes, yes, but on a probability curve, this percentage of stuff is more likely to happen than that, and they're going to not necessarily be happy with the rules that I have come up with, because we have always favored simplicity and speed over accuracy and complexity.
I can imagine.
We want anybody to be able to use the system without having to have charts and charts and charts and charts and tables and tables and tables. So anyway, but there we go.
It sounds very familiar. I had aerial combat in my own D&D campaign a few months back. They had stolen an airship and they were chased by a dragon. It was a lot of fun, and I actually created a custom dice which they had to throw each round to see what they were flying in, this kind of Grand Canyon type place. I thought that would be exciting, lots of opportunities for accidents. And so I had a special dice in a digital dice roller that had an arrow going to the left, to the right, a little tunnel, all these kind of things. And it would be up to them basically what they were flying into, so that I didn't have to create this humongous map that I would only use 1% of. And we had a huge laugh with this, and there were relative speeds, and they were chasing each other, and there was breath weapons, and then they were firing these giant crossbows, and 2 people died. It was sort of tragic. And that was the worst part. So two very, very lovely characters died because a third character rolled a 1 on his piloting check. Oh well,
it does happen.
It does, happen. But it was one of the more exciting bits I found in the campaign. Is just the idea of just racing through these canyons. Lovely.
Absolutely. Okay. Did any of your characters try to fire themselves out of a catapult at the enemy ship?
No. They did have all kinds of interesting ideas, but that luckily they didn't try. No.
I've had that happen so many times. There is now actually a rule within my book that details the amount of damage that they take, what damage they do, because a 60 kilo or 70 kilo body hitting you at velocity is going to do damage. But yes, it's those kind of questions. I mean, but that's what makes the game so much fun. To run it, but also to play it, is to test those boundaries and see what happens.
And I try to keep it rules light and very narrative, so they had a lot of control also. So there was another die. They had to roll a percentage whether or not there would be a mishap. And if there was, they had another die they had to roll, and then they could describe it themselves. So there was a die that showed one side of the die showed some rocks crumbling. I said, okay, what happens? Why is there suddenly rocks falling down? We hit the side of the canyon, and now the rocks hit the dragon. Oh, okay. And these kind of things. And yeah, we had quite a lot of fun with that. Lovely, good memory also.
Yes.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us, I think, neatly from the intro, which is half an hour now, to a couple of questions that I have, because I'm playing quite a long campaign with these guys, and I used your sentence that you hear on your channel quite a lot. Someone wants something badly and is having trouble getting it. And I'm not going to say what it is because my players listen to this. Yeah. So yeah, one of my questions to you is, so when you go to create a campaign, what role does narrative or the narrative structure play in your planning?
I'm going to keep this short because, as you know, I've done an entire YouTube channel on it. We're in about 420 videos now. So I do have a lot to say when it comes to narrative structure. But bottom line, narrative structure, narrative imperative, story structure, the 3-act structure, all of that kind of stuff, all of it is designed to help you to think up a story that is robust, so that there's a satisfactory conclusion to that narrative, but it is designed primarily to support you in creating your story. So there are lots of different things that you can look at when you look at narrative structure. And that sentence that you read out there, I certainly didn't come up with it. I got it from some writing workshop or script writing workshop that I went to, but that was for film and television.
Yeah.
And then I've adapted it and evolved it and grown it to being more appropriate to role playing. And once you have that sentence down, there is no reason why you can't come up with stories and adventures on the fly. And go, well, okay, they walk into a village. Oh, they don't. They head north.
Yeah.
They come across a person. That person will want something.
Yeah.
And if they're not having difficulty getting it, there's no story.
Yeah.
So if they have difficulty, then suddenly that difficulty needs to be overcome.
Yeah.
And it is very much, and this I learned having lived in Japan for 2 years, I learned very much is a Western approach, that there is a difficulty that must be overcome by the hero, because the hero wants to achieve something. In Eastern storytelling, often the hero overcomes adversity not because they have a bigger goal, but because the adversity has come to them and is disrupting their life. So we tend to think of the hero as being better off and achieving great things. The Eastern side of it is the hero manages to get back to what it was before.
Yeah.
So it's a subtle difference, but it's definitely an interesting perspective to look at it. Either way, structure gives us the ability to make up those stories quickly and easily.
Yeah, and I have to say, I find ever since I started using that sentence, I agree. It really helps. So the campaign I've been running is, I think, 1.5 years now. That we play roughly once a month if we can make it. Adult life and all that. But yeah, because I know that sentence by heart, I know what I filled in the blanks. Who is someone? What do they want? Why? And why is it so difficult to get it? Every time I start preparing for the session, I go back to that sentence and I go, okay, so let's tie it into that at least a bit. And whenever there is a random interaction with the story that I hadn't thought up yet, I can go back and go, okay, if I want this very badly, what would I do right now? Yeah. And it's just, it's a wonderful technique. Even if I don't use the rest of the book, that one sentence, it has helped me a lot. So I'll definitely put a link to that particular video in the show notes, and to some other stuff, to the books as well. And you mentioned screenplays and scripts. So one of my previous episodes, I interviewed a novel author, Seth Skokowski. You might know of him, and and
he tried to get me arrested last year.
Yes. Oh, really?
Seth Skokowski and I have a very, very fun friendship. And we were both at Gen Con, and we had never met in person before, but we met at Gen Con, and basically we spent the entire weekend together, thick as thieves. And that's what he wanted me to become, was a thief, to steal a scooter and to scoot down Gen Con Lane as a criminal. Yes, because he thought it would be interesting to see happen. I didn't steal a scooter, but yes, no, he's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man.
Yeah, and I asked him, so writing a novel and writing for games, or writing a campaign for a game, how does those two things relate? And he said, well, it's very different, because when you're writing a novel, you're in control, and when you're writing a campaign, well, as soon as you play the first session, that's it. It's out of your hands, really, for the large part. And so I wonder, how does your experience with screenplay and scripts translate to role-playing games?
I think that what has been very interesting from my perspective, simply because I have been, well, I was part of the film and television space now 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But when we were in the early 2000s, we were still in a headset of episodic television. So you would have maybe one or two shows where there was, to a degree, an ensemble cast, but generally there was always the one heroic character, the main character, if you like.
Yeah.
And that's what you kind of come across in film as well, and in to a certain degree in novels. Role-playing is definitely not that. No. We're a team, we're a group of people, and unless you're playing a one-on-one game, which then becomes very much like a film or a TV show, you have an ensemble cast. So the stories need to become far more complicated, and that's what television started to do as well. Once we had moved out of the fear that people weren't going to watch a series because they only came in halfway through, and we didn't yet have things like PVRs and the internet to be able to go and catch up on what we'd missed.
Yeah.
We then could start to tell television series that were that spanned across mega episodes. And now, of course, we're at the stage where you can't watch just one season and get the story. You have to watch 8 seasons to kind of get the story.
Yeah.
Because now we know that people are going to just binge watch an entire season in a single sitting.
Yeah. So
when writing or when conceiving of a campaign, you have the single thread, and that I definitely brought from script writing. Someone wants something bad, is having difficulty getting it.
Yeah.
The joy is the players coming in, and being the reason why that person is not getting what they want. Yeah. It makes it manageable, and I think a lot of people, they say to me, "Oh, but if you're trying to figure out what the bad guy wants, what do the good guys want?" And you go, "Well, you don't know. Yeah. You're not writing for the good guys. You're not controlling the good guys. They will do what they want to do. So you have to control what you can control, and that is ostensibly the villain's story."
Yeah.
And it allows you to create a more believable world because you're doing what you think the villain would do in reaction to what the players are doing. So it doesn't really, and I hate saying this because people then go, "Oh, well, you're just railroading." It doesn't really matter what the players' characters do, because the villain has a plan. And if the player characters interfere with that plan, then the villain must react.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful realization when you start to look at it from that perspective, that, oh, well, in that case, then I don't have to worry about trying to plan for next week's session and what the players are going to do.
No.
I just need to plan for next week's session and what my villain is going to do. And that's a lot more manageable than trying to anticipate, because you'll never be able to anticipate, ever.
No.
It's 6 or 5 or 4 other people's brains, and they are doing all kinds of wonderful things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is interesting. And it's an ensemble, and you have to give everyone equal time, and just take it from there.
Yeah, and I've seen that as well in television, that development from exactly the one guy, let's say what was that show, this bounty hunter, I forgot the name, doesn't matter, but there's this one guy and you're always following him, and then there's some randos around, and then I always thought, okay, that's cool. And then people in the beginning in role-playing games that I was involved in, also people had that idea in their heads, like, oh, my character is going to be like that person, which means you get very individualistic kind of characters. Whereas when they work as a team, it's so much better. It's more fun, but also so much more effective. And of course, it's fun to try and sow some discord. So in my particular D&D campaign at the moment, there's some of that, and it's so much fun. And it's also partially coming from the players themselves, and a little bit from just what they did and the world reacting to them. Having a good laugh. And so when you play, so you say you run, or you used to run at conventions, so that those are one shots. What for you is the difference between campaign mode, let's say, and one shots?
I think in a one shot you have the opportunity to try different things that you don't normally or wouldn't normally try in a campaign. And I used to love doing one shots at conventions, because then you go, right, I am not going to play a single game that is in the system that I normally play in. So I can go and try different role-playing systems. And writing or running a one-shot game really allows you to explore a single idea. And I think this was something that I learned very early on when I used to write one-shots, and I still do it to a certain degree now as well, but I'm getting better at this. It takes time. The one-shots that I used to write, you'd start playing them and you'd go, but this is going to take us 6 months to run. That's not a one-shot.
And
I'd go, well, it's 61 shots. How about that? And they're like, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So I realized that I was putting in too much information. And that kind of got me to the point where I was like, well, actually, there is a bit of a rule of thumb that starts to come in terms of how long people take to do things. And I'm not one for pigeonholing people, but when you start to see the same trend over and over and over again, you go, well, okay, if you're playing for 3 hours, you can break that into half-hour blocks, and suddenly you can really see how these things break down. If you're running a long-term campaign, you don't have to worry about those kind of time constraints. There's a different kind of time constraint that you have to worry about, and that is keeping your players entertained and engaged. And that's pacing. That is literally giving them those twists and turns, but realizing that you have a long time in which to do it. I think one shots, you have one twist, one reversal, and one sort of surprise moment, or not, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make it any better or any worse, because everyone knows that it's going to come to an end.
Okay. And I find with one shots you can also be a bit more or a bit less careful, let's say, with some of the characters. So in a long-term campaign, one of my challenges is that I tend to think in terms of these are the characters who are going to have to somehow at the end of the whole story do this and this, and that's a big mistake, because you give them plot armor, and once they realize that, well, you're screwed. And with a one shot, well, good luck. And and so you're saying that when you try to create a one shot, this time constraint actually helps you to as a kind of building block, right? So 30-minute blocks. There we go. Boom, boom. Yeah, that's a good idea. Because what I find now is that I had this grand idea for my campaign based on someone who wants something badly, etc. And it's been going on for I think over we started in 2017. Oh shit, that's longer than I thought. Anyway, yeah, and that's kind of the problem now. It's kind of run away with me, and or I've run away with it. I don't know. And now I'm like, okay, they're gathering a certain number of MacGuffins. They're at MacGuffin 7 or 8 of 13. I'm like, we should kind of try to draw this to an end somehow, because I mean, it's not like we're bored. We're still enjoying the campaign, but it also feels to me like at some point there needs to be an ending, before we're all in a care home somewhere. So how would you, what advice would you give me? So I've got my campaign, I've got my someone wants something badly, and I'm thinking, okay, we need to up the pacing. How do I do that?
Pacing is difficult to explain.
Yeah.
And it's more difficult to then enact. I was actually doing a video on pacing the other day, trying to figure out how best to convey this idea, because a lot of people have exactly the same challenge that you have. Is I've got this thing, it's already going, but I need to change it up somehow. And how do I do that? So pacing is that there are multiple areas that get affected by pacing. So in a single session, you should have varied pacing to begin with.
Yeah.
And what I found really easy to think about when we talk about pacing is it is the difference between an action and a reaction. Now, I'm not talking fifth edition in terms of their nomenclature.
Yeah.
When players are reacting, the pace is quick, or it should be quick. They're deciding, they're in combat, they're in a tense negotiation. That is when they are reacting to the situation. They are not in control of it. When they are acting, that means they are in charge. And so they're having group conversations. They are going shopping, for example. They are drawing up their battle plans. They're on a sea voyage that's going to take 2 weeks. And realizing that there are those two phases, you as the game master are always in control of your world. So if you've had a session where it's them acting, and you've just sat back and not necessarily been required to even be there, for one session, that's fine, because the players are obviously engaged. But for the next session, you need to change the pacing, which means you need to get them to react. So that is on a small scale, your first level of pacing is to constantly keep it that the players, sometimes they're in charge of time and sometimes they're not in charge of time. That translates into a bigger scale when you start talking about your campaign and you say, okay, well, you've got 7 out of the 13 items or however many it might be, of the MacGuffins, etc. The next, what is it? The next 6. So they're not, like they're almost at halfway mark. And you want to speed that up. It's about saying, okay, well, we've taken 2 years to get to this point. Is it going to be Game of Thrones season 8, where in the last 10 minutes we get everything?
No.
That may feel unsatisfactory. So what you then need to do is look and say, okay, well, how do we increase the pace? Well, that's by getting more MacGuffins to them, or them losing MacGuffins to the big bad, who then is going to try and enact their plan with less. How do you then make that feel as if it's necessary? And again, it's about saying, well, I've got 5 sessions until June or July. The next session, I'm going to establish an NPC within the group. And the NPC is going to appear to be trying to help the group. And I'm going to use 3 sessions to do that in. And I want session 1 to be a reactionary session. So it means that there will be lots of combat. There will be a few moments where the players can act, but it's mainly going to just be a go, go, go session. So I'm going to have a gigantic monster attack, or I'm going to drive them over a cliff and watch as they, however you want to play it out.
Yeah.
So I want 2 sessions of pace, of speedy pace, where stuff is going on. It's chaos. It's absolute mayhem. And then the third one is going to be a slow movement. And the reason why it's a slow movement is because that allows the players who have then spent 2 sessions investing in this NPC or being with the NPC, they will see that this NPC's fought on their behalf, that this NPC has done this and has done that and is on their side. Third session, they now accept the NPC and they have a chance to talk and to discuss and to understand and to build those little bridges. The fourth period, the fourth session, is going to be a bit of a mix. It's going to start off slow and then it's going to end with this big moment. And then the fifth one is where the betrayal is going to happen.
Okay.
Where this NPC then steals from them, or if it's the other way around, this NPC tells them that there's a secret organization that has actually got 3 more of these items. And that NPC will then remain loyal with them throughout the rest of the campaign. So again, it's not trying to figure out how the whole campaign is going to finish. It's about saying, how do I make it faster, but not abandoning my pacing of reaction and action, reaction and action. And we tend to try and overthink how we're going to get these individuals involved. And we don't necessarily have to do that. The NPC wants to ingratiate themselves with the PCs. How are they going to do it? Well, maybe they hire some goons to attack the party and to attack them at the same time, and then they can fight with, So again, put yourself in that situation, figure out their plan, and then look at how you can pace it over a block of 5 episodes. Don't go beyond 5 episodes, because you never know. The players might kill the character in the first episode. But then you continue to stick to your plan. You just adjust, saying, well, that NPC died. Maybe the NPC dies and leaves a note of where 3 of these items are. And that then continue, so again, by having access to the building blocks, if you like, of story, you can fall back on it and go, well, what does the story say? And the story says, well, you can't have, well, not you can't have, but if you don't vary your pace, things get boring. So if it's just go, 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 go all the time, after a while, you're like, well, I can't actually handle that. It becomes too much. So then you sit back and you say, okay, I need a fast, I need another fast, and then I need a slow. Because we've been told don't go fast all the time.
Exactly.
So I need a combat, I need a chase sequence, I need a tense diplomatic negotiation, or a couple sequences like that. Right, so that's my fast, and then I need a slow. So that's when they're on a journey somewhere, or and that, I think, is what makes running these games the interesting puzzle that we as game masters then have the joy of trying to figure out. Is like, well, I really want it to be a slow session, but how do I make it slow? How do I tone it down? We often forget we're in charge of the story, and we're in charge of the narrative. The players are not. They're making decisions, but we control whether they get onto that stagecoach and it takes 5 seconds to say, you cross the Great Desert. It's hot, it's dry, and by the time you arrive on the other side, if you ever see a cactus again, you will kill it. We could do it that way. Or we could spend 6 years of real game time as that carriage is slowly ripped apart through the desert. They survive the desert. They go into the underground. They come back out from the, it's entirely up to us. And we forget that we have that power. So sometimes it's about reminding ourselves that if we wanted to slow down, we just make it slow down. The art or the mastery comes in making it feel as if it's a logical slowdown.
Yeah.
And not just lazy DMing going, okay, well, now we're slowing down because I
Yeah.
need you to slow down.
Yeah. Anybody want to buy any items? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we had quite a lot of shopping in one of our last episodes. And I find, on the one hand, yeah, okay, that's it's part of the fun of a game is looking through all these items. Oh, what can I buy? What can I use? And also, after a while, like you say, if it takes too long, that part of the game, it's yeah, it's not that interesting. At least for me, when I run it. What does this cost? Why do I care? It's however much money you have, that's what it costs. Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because
Yeah.
it is a difficulty. People say,
Yeah.
well, I want to buy 12 of these. Can I
Mm.
haggle? Can I do this? Can I do that? And you're going, this is really what you came here to do? This is what you want to do? But I
Yeah.
also realized that there are a couple of things. What I discovered was that whilst the character is busy buying their dagger or whatever, it's a fantastic ability to have the NPC be able to turn to the character and say, oh, what have you been getting up to? Oh, you're
Yeah.
buying 10 daggers? That's unusual. Are you a dagger juggler, or what? Are you one of them adventurers?
Yeah.
And to then be able to use the NPCs to get the players to divulge information which may get them to actually think about the information that they have and
Yeah.
reflect sometimes, because that doesn't
Yeah.
often happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we were writing nautical campaigns, and this is why you made me laugh,
Yeah.
is that we went, hang on a moment, a ship can carry 100 tons.
Yeah.
How much does 100 tons of flour cost? And we're like, okay, let's go to the rule books. Let's see what's been established. There is nothing.
No.
They tell you how much 1 pound of stuff costs. And you go, all right, well, there's 1,000 pounds in a ton, or that's not that, it's 1,200 pounds in a ton or something like that.
Yeah.
So then you just times that by that, and you go, well, surely you get bulk discount, and you get this, and you get that, and da 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 da. So we included all of that in the book because we're like, someone is going to ask.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If I transport 100 tons of silver bars, what can I sell it for? And you go, yep. I mean, that's why we created these amazing ship battle rules, so that you could trade.
Yeah. Well, and then we can blow your 1,000 tons of flour into smithereens.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah. In another campaign, we had they had their own keep, and the keep included an oubliette, which is just a wonderful thing. And they kept throwing NPCs in there. It was amazing. I thought, how big do you think this thing is? Oh, in every session, at least once, yeah, throw them in the oubliette. Oh, I love it. Yeah. Where were we? Oh yeah. So so we're talking about pacing here, about let's build up to some sort of final episode or final season of a campaign, and then we should have some sort of satisfying ending. And I'm looking for ways to inject a little bit more drama into it all. So far, I mean, they're pretty invested in the story, I find, and they love this MacGuffin thing. I've built out of foam core this old stone tablet that I've broken into pieces, and they keep trying to get pieces and trying to read what it says. So that's a lot of fun, and there's a good amount of role playing going on, and they're I think they're pretty invested in their characters. But when it comes to drama, I find it challenging to create these moments of real emotion. Is there any advice you would have for me, and of course my listeners? I'm really making use of this of this interview for myself here, but is there any advice you have to inject the nice kind of drama into your games, not the drama of problem players, all that stuff? We don't need that.
No, we don't. Interestingly enough, well, I find it interesting. Again, having traveled the world and seen how people create drama and what creates drama.
Yeah.
I remember I released this video and got a huge amount of support from one side, criticism from the other side. The best way to inject drama, I find, into role-playing is sex.
Right.
And people go, wait, what do you mean? This is a role-playing game. We don't talk about that kind of thing.
Whoa, yeah.
And you go, well, when you think about what really causes people to get angry about something or to have a dramatic reaction, invariably it comes down to love. Who do they love, or what do they love, and what is being threatened by that? So a lover does something, you feel betrayed, and that causes you to try and get revenge because you feel betrayed. You wouldn't try and get revenge if you didn't care about the action. If you didn't, if that person had zero meaning to you and they did something, you wouldn't go on a vendetta to destroy them or to try and get any kind of reaction from them. And this is something that when you look at Star Trek, the original series, so not Kirk's time period, the 1960s, when you look at the 1980s and 1990s, they were using very obvious templates, either of emotional states or of socioeconomic states on their races. You could say, oh, well, that race represents the Nazis. That race represents the Mormons. That race represents capitalists, etc., etc. So it's very useful as a tool to sit back and say, okay, well, let's look at the race that they used where there is no emotion. And that's the Vulcans. They have purged emotion from their beings. They're pure logic. And then you look at the stories that they wrote about the Vulcans, and there are none until they bring in emotion. And it's only when they bring in emotion that suddenly there's a story. And it's these really sad stories as well, because usually it's the Vulcan having an emotional outburst where they show their true feelings, that you go, oh, wow, this cold, dispassionate individual actually cared. Here is real drama. So when we look at role-playing games, our player characters, to a very large degree, have zero love for anything in the game other than perhaps their character. Maybe between the player characters there might be something, but it's very seldom that it's ever explored, because it's weird and freaky to say you love your fellow friend's character. Right? We kind of go, whoa, what is it's strange. Right? So it's when we step away from that and go, no, actually, my character has fallen in love with your character and will do anything for your character because they're absolutely in love. And then to look at that and see whether there is a reciprocity there, whether that character reciprocates. And when people say to me, oh, what was your favorite session, or what's your favorite game been? It has always been when there has been love involved. And that love is usually as a result of breaking the barrier. So that's why I say it's all about sex. Sex has nothing to do with love, but sex is shocking enough that even in today's role-playing space, people go, sorry, what?
You get
I'm not
people's
going to
attention.
sit around the table and describe my character having sex.
No.
And I go, okay, so don't do that, but describe your character's emotional reaction to somebody they care about. So if you won't go to the sex level, come down a little bit. Let's talk about love. And it's still difficult. But my favorite stories, I will never forget. I had a player who had his character fall in love with an NPC. And the NPC would respond to his character's actions as he had been raised to respond from an emotional perspective, and would interpret what the player's character did from that emotional state. And when the player forgot or stepped out of that caring relationship and said something flippant to this NPC, the NPC reacted in terrible, terrible ways.
Yeah.
And over the course of a couple months, I suppose, the rest of the players realized, hang on a moment, the NPC is really in love with this character.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where the NPC believed that they were in love with the PC, but the PC was not in love with them.
Oh.
And so one night they were on a sailing ship. One night left, escaped silently and quietly.
Oh.
And the PC went, well, why did he leave? And the rest of the players went, because he was in love with you. And you were completely oblivious. You just didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And the player went, oh my God, I do love him. We have to go find him. And so then the whole adventure, they were saving the world. They had ground to a halt whilst he went to look for his love whom he had forsaken.
Yeah.
And that was as close to a real reaction as I have come. I have had other reactions which were not nearly as fun. They were deeply dramatic. I've had players burst into tears and have to leave because they were so emotionally involved.
Yeah.
But again, it was because of investing love into these characters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a lot of people, the moment I start talking about, oh, you should have this love in the game, and you should look at your character as a being that wants to have sex, that wants to have a relationship, that has a parent that they actually care about, and not just as a single entry in a character sheet.
Yeah.
People often go, oh, well, you just want to do perverse stuff. Absolutely not. It has nothing to do with it. And the moment players have their characters starting to engage in anything that is remotely, I used to say PG-16, but nowadays that doesn't mean anything. But I quite literally say, all right, you lean in for a kiss, and the camera pans away to the sky. Right, what are the rest of you doing whilst they're doing that in the background? Because that's all we need. We don't need anything more than that.
No. We have our imagination.
It's breaking that barrier to have that emotional connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know what the original question was, so I'm sorry about that.
That's fine. Yeah.
I'm very passionate about that space. Because there's so much controversy around there, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Plus, the funny thing is that with a lot of role-playing games, there's many rules about how to kill things and maim them and slay them, and all the equipment you need for that. And yeah, some games have some rules about, okay, you have a brother or a sister, roll up some stats for them. And of course, a lot of people are interested in creating some sort of background. But when it comes to love, most role-playing games are pretty quiet about it. Pretty quiet. There's one game, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called The Riddle of Steel. Nope. It's a lovely role-playing game. It's out of print, sadly. But I do know that it has two successors. One is available on Drive-Thru RPG. It's called Blades of the Iron Throne, made by fans of the game. Another one is coming out really soon. They're now doing open beta testing. And it's called, what is it? Something and Scoundrels. Swords and... No. Well, something and Scoundrels. I'll put it in the show notes so I don't look like a complete idiot. But so that the main thing about those games is that they use what they call spiritual attributes for characters, and that's the first time I came across a game that specifies you have a passion. Your character has a passion. You have to define it, and only if you pursue that passion you get XP or whatever you want to call it, experience points. Killing 1,000 orcs is not going to help you unless it is to save your love or to rescue your parents or something that you care about. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. The only problem that we came across trying to play that game is that because all these characters are super invested in their particular individual passion, that you get, it's difficult to get a group that gels very well.
No, we're going after my passion, but we always go after your passion. We're going after my passion today. And you know, it is an absolutely honest space, and it is a challenge.
Yeah.
And that's where I then say things like metagaming is good.
Yeah.
where you as the player are going, well, yes, my character would want to just pursue their passion.
Yeah.
But we're playing a collective game here. So my passion doesn't have to be pursued right now.
No.
So I'm going to support them.
Yeah.
But, and this is where it gets really tricky, is that the rest of the players need to be in the same headspace.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if there isn't, that one player who doesn't realize that they have to share will just take everything and cause the whole thing to fall apart. Anyway.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful game. It's spiritual attributes. They're really great way to get around the murder hobo behavior that you see in some games, because murdering doesn't really give you anything in that game except hurt. Because they combine it with a very realistic combat system that is extremely deadly. So you're only really going to fight if you care enough to do so. Yeah, really. It's wonderful. Something to read up on. I think it's very nice. So that's great advice. So because I'm looking for ways to get this drama in, so that towards the end we can really have moments that people are like, oh no, that's what I'm really looking for. A good
give them some NPCs that fall in love with them, or that antagonize them, but in that friendly kind of way. Because that's the other thing is that when I say love, it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. It could be platonic, and it could be, I love to hate that guy.
Oh yeah.
Why is there this other adventuring party that has got 2 out of the other remaining 6 artifacts?
Yeah,
and they won't share with us, and they're racing with us to get to the next one. So you start to build again. You're playing purely on the emotions. There's nothing else involved.
Yeah.
So yes, get them to love something.
Yeah.
And then you can take it away, and then give it back again, and then take it away.
Excellent. Oh, well, my players who are listening to this, they're going to be like, "Oh, you bastard!"
They're not going to trust anyone, which is perfect. Because then, yes, when they don't trust them at the critical moment, they cause their death.
Exactly.
Oh yes. Anyway.
Perfect. Yeah. Lovely. Hey, and one thing that I ask all of my guests on the show, well, I say all, you're the 7th, 8th by the time this comes out, but every single person so far that I've spoken to is an RPG hero of mine. But I'm sure, being around in this world of RPGs for so long, you have also looked up to people, or maybe you currently look up to someone that you think, wow, they did something great, or they're doing something wonderful, they made this amazing thing. Who would be your personal RPG hero?
It's a difficult one, and I'm torn between two people.
Okay.
One, they're very, very young, and it's a young creator by the name of Jacob. He runs a YouTube channel called XP to Level 3.
Okay. Hugely
successful YouTube channel. He releases videos and what I love about Jacob as a role player is he's a really, really skilled role player. He's a very good storyteller, but he also knows that it's about having fun.
Yeah.
So he doesn't take things too seriously.
Yeah.
And he's a huge influencer for his age group. And when you are dealing with people who are influencers, you always sort of talk about, well, who's your target market? Who's your target market? And very seldom do you transcend into other target spaces.
Yeah.
And his group, the 16 to 24-year-olds, he's such a positive force because he does it right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I can drop him a message and say, hey, you're 10 times as big as I am. You've got 50,000 options on your plate. Let's do something together.
Yeah.
And he'll go, sure, let's do it. I mean, we did a Christmas song. When was it? Last year or the year before?
Oh, really?
He sang it.
Yeah.
I wrote the lyrics. He sang it. And we released it out. And it was just a bit of fun. But that's what he realized. That's what this wonderful space is.
Yeah.
And the other hero that I would I would be remiss without is a gentleman named David Fryand.
Hmm.
And Dave he's one of the team members that runs the channel Nerdarchy.
Ah, yes.
And Dave and I don't know what I did, but I must have done something right.
Okay.
Because Dave talks to me.
Hmm.
And I always take that as a sign that I've done something right when people are willing to talk to me again after having spoken to me the first time round, because it means that they're in for the long haul.
Hmm.
And what I love about Dave is that he is so humble and so quiet about his successes and his influence, but at the same time, he doesn't really give a damn.
Hmm.
He gives out advice. He produces a vast amount of content with Ted, and they both you meet them and you sit at a bar and you have a beer with them, and they're just absolutely wonderful people.
Yeah.
And there's no pretense. There is what it is. And when you role play with him, he is a remarkable role player insofar as he manages to combine someone who is going to build the best possible character they can, but also someone who will then play that character with a huge amount of emotion, which you don't see if you don't tap into that.
Right.
And again, it's just an example of a person where you go, that is the right way to do it. Is where you've got all the stuff, but you're not trying to force anyone else to do what they don't want to do. No. You're just having fun.
Yeah.
And I really, really, really look up to both of them. Jake, because I'm so envious, he's got 20 years on me to continue to do what he loves doing.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll see them both this year again at Gen Con, because we always have a lot of fun together.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, those sound like excellent heroes, and they're in the halls of heroes now when it comes to my podcast. Great, wonderful. Well, thank you so very much for being here on the show and sharing all this stuff with me. And there's like a million other questions I'd love to ask, but perhaps we can do another interview at some other point. We'll do 2.0. Yeah. Great. Wonderful.
2.0. I like that. Yes.
Wow. Another great interview with a wonderful, wonderful RPG hero. Thank you again, Guy Sclanders. Wonderful. And, there was so much that we discussed. And, in fact, I only got kind of halfway my ideas of questions. So Guy just had so much to tell us, where I really believe that we should do an interview 2.0 at some point. A lot of interesting points there, a few of which are the pacing action versus reaction. That idea, this slow, fast, this mix of going slow, going fast in your game, I thought that was super interesting, and it's something that I really want to try to apply to my games. Also making the characters love something or someone to really get people invested in your game is just a perfect example of the type of ideas that you can learn from watching Guy's videos. And I thought it was an interesting concept that as a game master, you're not in charge of much apart from time and the bad guys. Everything else, what the players do, etc., well, that's up to the players. And as long as you're aware that you're in charge of time and that you're in charge of what the bad guys do and how they react to stuff, well, then that really gives you a good handle on what to do and how to do it as a game master. So I hope this episode has given you some ideas of what to do the next couple of weeks, hopefully not months, when we're all shut in our houses. Try and run a few one-shots, why not? So use the internet, go on virtual tabletops such as Roll20, and just have a blast and play with people you know or play with people you don't know. Go on and visit that OSG group on Facebook. They're just super wonderful. And if you're not into that, or if you've been playing a lot of one-shots and you'd like to give a campaign a try, well, now's the time, since we're not going to be doing much else for a while. And hopefully by the next time that you listen to my episodes, we'll all be walking around freely again. Well, that's it for episode 7. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording. And if you did, please consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes. It would really help to get the podcast get heard. Want to keep up with the latest news about my podcast? Well, then hop on over to Twitter at RPGHeroes1. Check out the full show notes with all the links at rpgheroes.buzzsprout.com. If you want to support the show and join other supporters on my Discord channel, well, I would be honored if you check out my completely renewed Patreon page at patreon.com/rpgheroes. 2 weeks from now, I'm actually not sure what the topic will be, since the corona pandemic has messed up my interview schedule. Sorry about that. Well, until next time, stay heroic.